Coming up next, once more into the breach as we read and discuss Midsummer's Night's... I always want to say Midsummer's Night's Dream or Midsummer's Night Dream.
But never the right way.
I never want to say A Midsummer Night's Dream. Mm-hmm. This is Nathan Robinson. I'm your host. Welcome you to the Bookening. I'm joined here by my two best friends in the whole wide world. The first best friend, not first in my affections, but just the first of the two, but equal in esteem, would be Brandon Chasteen, the scholar who's a baller of reading.
Hi, Nathan.
Hey, Brandon, what's your favorite song?
I don't know. I don't have a favorite song.
Is it Happy Birthday?
Yes.
Okay. It's a good song.
That's a great song.
No longer under copyright, so we could sing it today if we wanted to.
Is anybody's birthday?
I'm sure it's someone's birthday. Coming in second still in affection. Wait, what? Are you looking up whose birthday it is?
Yeah.
Okay, let's find out. I can wait. Jake's going to look up whose birthday it is.
It's got to be somebody's.
And then we have to sing this person happy birthday, whoever it is. Birthday, what is today?
But not for the listener.
What's that?
Not for the listener, it's not.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Well,
Would you like some on this day in history?
Are you looking up when this episode drops?
No, I'm looking up the day we're recording it.
We need to do this for the listeners' benefit, I think, and know what the biggest
celebrity... Well, this would
celebrity...
be neat for the listeners' benefit because then they'd have a puzzle to solve. What day did we actually record?
Yeah, they can go back and find this out. Yeah. So find the most obscure.
Yeah, find some
author. What would that be?
Yeah. Find someone that ties into the Bookening, and we will sing that person happy birthday.
Okay, you're just going to have to pick like a century. I got this long list of famous people.
Well, is anybody literary jumping out at you?
It's a really long list. Alexander Dumas.
There we go.
Okay, I guess that.
Alexander Dumas.
Should we sing happy birthday to Alexander Dumas?
Sing happy birthday, old dumbass.
I could probably find somebody better.
Yeah,
he's our favorite.
The greatest writer of all time. Is it Pear or is it young Dumas or old Dumas? They probably don't have the same birthday.
Probably don't. Yeah.
Okay, it was stupid.
You idiot.
I'm sorry. I admit that was a dumb thing.
Sometimes I wonder why you even open your mouth, Nathan.
Yeah. We can wait for Jake. I'll just talk to Brandon while Jake...
the listeners are finding this exciting.
How do you say Carducci's first name?
How do you know who Carducci is?
Because he's this like Nobel Prize laureate poet.
Oh, the great Carducci. You guys know.
I don't know.
It is what it sounds like. The great Carducci.
Presenting the great Carducci.
One fish, red fish, blue fish.
You guys know. It looks like he's an Iranian. I think he's a song guy, a what are you guys called? Musicians.
A troubadour.
You gotta find us a good birthday so this segment can end, Jake.
Sorry, man.
Looks like it's Dumas.
It's Dumas. All right. Bum 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 bum. Happy. Bum 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 bum. Happy birthday to you, Jake. You have to sing "Happy Birthday" to Alexander Dumas.
Sorry. I need to know which one I'm singing to.
He's just really desperate not to sing to Dumas.
Here, okay.
Wait,
yeah,
this is the Three Musketeers.
Okay, we can feel better about singing "Birthday" to that guy than the other guy. He wrote some weird romance stuff or something, pretty racy stuff, I think. So that's better. All right, here we go. Bum 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 bum. Happy. Jake's not.
I did too sing. I was singing. He just couldn't.
Oh, he was ringing. Okay, I guess I got.
Wait.
Did you find somebody better?
No, I was wrong. This is the Sun.
Oh, we can shoot.
This is the one that whose play appears in My Antonia.
Oh, okay. We'll do it for my and Tony. We'll do it for Jim's sake. Old Jim Bundren. Bum, 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 bum.
Bundren, yes. I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Jim Bundren? What did I say?
It was Burden, wasn't it?
Oh, Burden. Whatever.
Bundren is from Gilead, right?
Oh,
yeah.
gross. You're right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, boy. Excuse me while I go and throw myself off a bridge. All right.
You really did that.
So, in honor of Willa Cather, we will now sing Happy Birthday to Alexander Dumas the Younger. Bum, bum, bum. Jake, would you like to do the bum, 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 bums?
No, I wouldn't.
I'll take that as a no. Bum, 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 bum. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. What?
Happy
Birthday, dear Alexander Dumas the Younger. Happy birthday to you.
All right, that's done.
All right, and now we can continue with the bookening.
Yes.
Oh, guys, wait, we have to do donor shout outs. You ready to shout out our donors, Brandon?
You better believe it.
Shout them out to John.
John.
Shout them out to Beth.
Beth.
Shout them out to Eric and Catherine.
Eric and Catherine.
Brendan actually just hit puberty as he was shouting that. So the bookening's done.
Mr. X in there.
Oh, yes, and a secretive whisper for Mr. X.
Mr. X.
He has to remain anonymous, and anonymous he or she shall remain. But he or she is giving us money, and he is in the donor. He and or she is in the donor.
If you'd like to hear Brandon shout your name,
Just give
please
money.
visit patreon.com/thebookening and give, was it $10?
You got to give at least $10.
$10 or more.
If you want to be anonymous and have Brandon do kind of a secretive whisper, like it's just between you and Brandon. You know what you have to do?
We could safely say that we'll have Brandon shout out pretty much anything you want to during our shout out section.
Oh, yeah,
If you give $10 or more.
Yeah, just keep it clean, folks. But if you want to give your name as Nugget McBurger Face or something like that,
Nugget McBurger.
Basically,
just because you want
Brandon will
Brandon.
say whatever you want him to if you give
Yeah, he'll be
$10 a month or more.
Yep.
That is what I do.
I think we should do baggage check. Or no, that's not how baggage check starts. It starts with an airplane going over. Guys, for 50 episodes in, I can't do my own shtick anymore. Jake, how's it going?
It's going.
Airplane! Indicating baggage check, the part of the show where Jay blah, 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 blah. We're now going to do our baggage. So this is where we talk about our baggage. We talk about what baggage we brought to this thing. Jake, what baggage did you bring to Midsummer Night's Dream?
Love Shakespeare. As we all know, if anybody has followed the show for any length of time, you know that I love Shakespeare, and he was pretty formative for me in turning me on to really love literature. But when I think of Shakespeare and what I love about Shakespeare, I don't think of the comedies.
If you're going to name your top Shakespeare play, do you have one that pops
No,
in
I
your head?
couldn't. I would probably just default to like Hamlet or something like that.
Not a shabby choice?
Not a bad choice at all, if I do say so myself. And if anybody else who rates Shakespeare plays says so, Hamlet is usually at the top.
People like Hamlet. I've noticed that about people.
Yeah, I don't know.
But Shakespeare really was. Again, we got a lot of new listeners these days because the bookening is wildly successful. So people might like to know the 3-sentence version of your story. Shakespeare really was like the first real, like, just sunlight pouring in through the windows into your brain, and suddenly you knew literature and all of that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I think I was a freshman in high school, and I had one of those high school literature teachers that up until then I had pretty much avoided reading anything that was ever assigned to me. But I had one of those teachers who was ruthless in her quizzes. And, I remember, I think the first book that we might have read would have been Great Expectations or something like that. I don't know. Because I remember being really angry about some of the dumb questions on the daily quiz, like what was the color of Pip's bag or something like that. And you just read 100 pages of something. You're supposed to remember what the color of Pip's bag was on page 182 or something. I don't know. And so I had to read if I didn't want to fail that class. And so I read Shakespeare, and I just loved him. And I loved him because I felt known and understood in a way better than I knew myself. And I hadn't really experienced that feeling before.
someone through the ages gets me. This Shakespeare guy
gets me better than I get myself, and that's really cool. Like I need to go to school and learn human nature from this guy, learn myself from this guy, read myself in his pages, and figure out, you're 15 years old or whatever, and figure out who I am and realize that kind of thing's out there. So Shakespeare was a big deal to me for that reason, and I would say there's a way in which you could say that put me down the trajectory of becoming a Christian, wanting to be known. And guess what? God knows us better than we know ourselves, and he's wrote a book too. He's written a book too. That's better than Shakespeare.
Right.
So that's sort of how I come to Shakespeare as somebody it's just stupid to say things like as somebody I have tremendous respect for or whatever, right? but I, he has a special place in my heart.
Well, for a lot of people, it's like Holden Caulfield or something like that they discovered when they were 15. But yours was Shakespeare because you're that much cooler than all those Holden
or dorkier,
or that much more of a raging nerd.
But anyhow, yeah. So Shakespeare. He meant a lot to me. I love Shakespeare. I think, I think I read every play in like whatever the reader was that we had at the time. It's been so long. I don't know if I had read A Midsummer Night's Dream. I assumed that I had and just didn't quite remember. The comedies would have washed off my back at that time. I didn't care as much about them because it wasn't like the insightful, and maybe some of the humor would have been over my head too.
Mm-hmm.
So I came expecting greatness and ready to accept whatever this was as great, whether it was or wasn't, and assume that if I didn't find it to be great, that the problem was with me.
It's nice to be able to do that, I think. It's nice to be able to just defer every once in a while to the authority of the ages and of
a couple of people that we can come to that way. And
he's one of them.
Maybe very few of them, but Shakespeare is certainly one of them.
If there's one person that we can just say he probably knew what he was doing, it's William Shakespeare.
There's the Bible,
right?
There's Calvin,
mm-hmm.
There's Shakespeare, and there's Jane Austen, and,
and
outside of those people,
and Agatha Christie, obviously, the great.
Those are, honestly, if you're gonna try to find 5 or 10 people that you're just gonna assume that. If you don't get it, it's because you're stupid.
The problem's with you.
Yeah.
Calvin,
that's
Austen,
a good list.
Shakespeare, and obviously the Bible would be number one.
Augustine.
I can't even think of another.
Tolstoy.
Yeah, but Tolstoy was really weird religiously.
He was weird.
Yeah. You can't just eat everything that Tolstoy gives you and assume it's nutritious. It's a rich feast, but it's not quite the same as Shakespeare, Brandon.
Well, it's not the same as Shakespeare.
It's not the same as Shakespeare.
It's not the same as Shakespeare.
It's not the Seamus.
No, neither. Not Seamus Heaney either. Boy.
So, as far as comedies go, the one that stands out in my mind that I read was The Taming of the Shrew, and I remember thinking that was funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's got those, that's the one that has the great, methinks the lady doth protest too much, and
Taming of the Shrew has a good, easy to remember plot hook. It's about the taming of a shrew,
right?
But some of the other plays
that's probably why it stuck. So
there's a shrew, she gets tamed, but this play is, yeah. Did you in fact remember it as you went through it, or did you suspect that perhaps you hadn't read it before?
I suspected that I hadn't read it.
Brandon, what baggage did you bring to this fine play?
Well, I don't like Shakespeare at all. Man, I think this play is the one that I've read the most of all the plays, except for maybe Julius Caesar.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's just this is often assigned in classes.
So it's not because you are just like,
and also I like this. I like this play. But it's been a long time since I've read it, and I forgot how much of a fever dream this play is.
It's really weird.
It's a very weird play. Yeah, he's doing a lot of fun. Well, I guess we'll talk about that in a minute. My baggage. Yeah, that basically is my baggage. I've read it a lot. I love Shakespeare.
What's your favorite Shakespeare? Gun to your head.
My favorite Shakespeare?
Heard you name drop The Tempest a lot in the book.
I think it would be The Tempest. I like his comedies, so I came at it from a different angle. I actually probably liked his comedies the most, and it's taken me the longest to actually come to terms and like Hamlet and Macbeth.
That's interesting.
but I like them now. And
I think probably the opposite of most people. If I just had to,
well, I guess it kind of makes sense if you realize that I was reading Dickens, and so the comedies are more along the Dickens flavor than
boisterous, colorful.
Yeah. And they are boisterous and colorful. I mean, I think Hamlet, now, if you were to put a gun to my head, what would I say is his greatest play? It would be Hamlet.
I think what's his greatest character study? Hamlet, easy. Yeah. The character of Hamlet.
But I still like The Tempest. I mean, with Jake here, every time I come to read Shakespeare, even so, one summer what I did is I read his history plays. They were all fantastic, and so you just can't go wrong reading him.
I really want to watch that. Has anybody watched that thing
that
the BBC did with what was that called, the Royal Crown or the Hollow Crown series?
Crown, yeah.
That's right.
Every time I go to the library, I look, and it's always checked out.
That's a star-studded thingamabobber, if ever there was one.
Huh?
Didn't they drop a second?
Yeah, they've done all the way through. What's the cycle? What's the actual cycle? They've done I think the Henrys and through Richard III.
Oh no, they've done cycle 1 and cycle 2.
So it's over.
Yeah, they've done Richard II, Henry IV, Part 1 and Part 2, Henry V, Henry VI, Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3, and Richard III.
Richard III. Oh.
And
Hunchback.
Cycle 1 stars Ben Whishaw, Jeremy Irons, and Tom Hiddleston. Cycle 2, Benedict Cumberbatch, Judi Dench, Sophia Okonedo, Michael Gambon, and Angus Emery.
Michael Gambon. Does he play Richard III?
It doesn't say right here. I don't know.
He'd be good Richard III.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
Every clip I've seen from it looks really great.
That's a great cast.
Yeah.
I'll have to watch some of those.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to do a history next year, so we have an excuse to just watch.
Do the Henrys and have to also watch the Kenneth Branagh films.
Are you an anti-Kenneth Branagh?
No, I like those films.
You said that with something like a sneer.
Oh, he makes me laugh sometimes, that's all.
Yeah, Kenneth Branagh might be one of the lesser parts of many Kenneth Branagh productions, actually, himself, but there's no hot take. I guess I should ask myself, Nathan, what baggage did you bring to this? I like Shakespeare a lot. I fall squarely into the modernist loser camp of people that really have an easy time with the melancholy Dane and all the blood and guts kind of plays, but have a much more difficult time with the comedies. I've read fewer of the comedies. I had not read this play before. This was my first time. I also have a very limited appreciation for farce, I guess. Like, I'm not hugely amused by people running around on stage in and out of...
With a donkey's head?
With donkey's head. I remember one of the funniest things I ever saw in my entire life was when I was very young, an episode of Gilligan's Island. They're planning a birthday party for Mr. Howell, and Mr. Howell somehow gets it in his head that they're planning to murder him.
Sounds funny.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
And then they do.
And then they do. The gravedigger has an amazing speech. No, Mr. Howell thinks they're trying to murder him, but they are, of course, trying to plan a surprise party. So there's all these silly mix-ups, Three's Company style kind of things where they're acting sketchy because they want to hide the party, but Mr. Howell thinks, and then it culminates in a scene where Mr. Howell sneaks up on the group and they've captured a pig and they need to kill it so that they can have a great feast. And Mr. Howell doesn't realize they've captured a pig, so he sneaks up on Gilligan and the skipper, and they're arguing about who's going to kill the pig, and he doesn't know the context. So the skipper's like, somebody's got to kill that old boar. And then Mr. Howell is horrified and thinks that they're talking about killing him. And I remember that line in particular slayed me as a 6-year-old or whatever. I was like, in the top 10 moments in Nathan's life where he's laughed, that's probably one of them. Like, somebody's got to kill that old boar is, but that was the last time I ever liked farce of that type, of the misunderstanding kind of, I don't know. I mean, I realize it's completely unfair to lump A Midsummer's Night's Dream in with something like Three's Company, but that is always what I think of, is the Jack and Christy got to trick the landlord into thinking that it's a French chef kind of, that hackneyed sitcom kind of thing is what's always in the back of my head. Obviously, Shakespeare is a genius, but it's never been my favorite form. Just like Nick Bottom thinks he's an ass or doesn't know he's an ass, and he keeps saying things that are humorously So don't worry, this is not going to be another Agatha Christie where I spend the time whining about how this is not my thing. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed this play a lot and enjoyed the couple movie versions of it I watched to some degree or another. But I will just say that whole thing, that type of humor of like crazy misunderstandings piling up on each other, it's kind of classic stuff that I think like Tartuffe or classic French. I don't know what it is. It'd be like classic French farce kind of. What Three's Company is basically doing. That kind of thing has never really appealed to me, except for that one Gilligan's Island episode, which was one of the great masterpieces of the comic art form, obviously.
Yeah,
got those phallic parades that Aristotle was liked. You've got Midsummer's Night's Dream, and you've got Gilligan's Island, the birthday surprise for Mr. Howell episode. Yeah. Shakespeare. I love him. The end. You guys like farce-y stuff? Big Three's Company fan, Jake?
Never really watched Three's Company.
Are you a big fan of that? I mean, you know what I'm talking about, like the kind of...
Yeah, like Gilligan's Island.
Or like Shakespeare. Are you a big fan of Shakespeare plays where people are putting on disguises and sneaking around and like complications are piling up? Kind of. Frasier used to do stuff like that a little bit more elegantly than Three's Company or Gilligan's Island. It's just never really been...
It's a comedy of errors.
A comedy of errors.
You keep having the misunderstandings are what's funny because you also know that there will be some sort of resolution.
Right.
Except... not always with things like, what'd you say? Frasier?
Frasier, yeah. Sometimes Frasier and Niles were still on the outs with each other by the end of those episodes.
Or Seinfeld.
Yeah. You like comedies of errors, Brandon?
Yeah, when it's done well, it makes me laugh.
I like to laugh.
I love to laugh. But
wild and long and free.
Long and loud and clear.
Is that what it is?
It's getting worse every year. I don't know if that's helpful baggage or not, but I did come to this play somewhat being like, I don't know, Shakespeare, I know you're a genius. I know if I don't like this, the problem's with me, but I'm not completely prepared for whether I'm going to like this or not because it's one of those complicated Three's Company type things, and I don't know, Shakespeare, but it was good. I liked it a lot. So
because it's not just all about the farce. The farce is part of it.
And the farce is, as far as farce goes,
is fun.
It's fun, and Bottom's a really funny character, actually. And
it's not about just making you laugh the whole time. It's also just about the joy of the situation and watching it unfold.
That was actually one of the really interesting things. I watched all right, we're moving out of context now. I watched end of context. I watched a version of this, I watched a recorded version of a live stage play, so you could hear the audience and you could hear where they laughed. And they laughed a lot, but for something that's basically billed as a comedy, I mean, they didn't laugh all that much. They thought Puck was funny, they thought Bottom was funny, and they thought the lovers were funny, I guess, once they started like getting their clothes ripped off, which is a reoccurring theme in adaptations, as I found out.
Yes. But
the audience seemed to enjoy that.
I watched clips from one of the stage plays at the Globe. A lot of the comedy was in the physical. Yeah. But it was pretty, the clips that I watched were pretty funny, and I think I would have enjoyed being there for it. That's what I remember thinking when I watched it. It would have been a really fun night at the theater for something like that. But maybe not as fun to sit at home and watch other people. I don't know. There's an interplay with
actually being there.
Yeah, with the audience. And there's like the interaction. They're sort of interacting with these moments where, Oberon and Puck are, they freeze and pretend to be trees or whatever. Yeah. But then they creep closer so they can hear, and they're playing with the audience and hand a stick to somebody in the crowd when they're done pretending to be trees, and little things like that are, I don't know.
Fun
I think
to
that
see.
kind of living play where you're actually playing off of the crowd is neat.
Yeah, I
like to be a part of that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up, my parents would sometimes take us to Shakespeare in the Parks sort of situations. You ever been to those?
I'm sure it was awesome, right?
Oh, they were fun. Yeah, it's the same sort of thing. They would sometimes break out of the actual play to just kind of like do a little nudge to the audience, and there's that interaction that made it fun. Or bring the play actually out into the audience and stuff like that when you're having chases. And I'm trying to remember which one we saw. I saw a modern version of The Taming of the Shrew, and we actually ended up leaving.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yep.
It's pretty tough finding versions of Midsummer Night's Dream that's not full of nudity.
Yeah. Don't watch.
That was the problem with somehow they worked that into Taming of the Shrew.
Yeah, so I watched the trailer for a couple of them, and there's a trailer for one featuring Judi Dench, and in the trailer for that one, Judi Dench is topless. And so I thought, I'll watch this other Kevin Kline one.
No, this was presumably filmed years ago, right? Like this wasn't like
yes.
recent.
It was a young Judi Dench. I didn't know it was Judi Dench until it was like Judi Dench. It said on the screen.
It was 2017. Topless Judi Dench.
The horror. The horror.
It's a very young Judi Dench.
Yeah. Actually, I tried to watch one with a young Helen Mirren, as a matter of fact, a very young babe version of Helen Mirren. I forget who she played, but yeah, I had to turn that version off for the exact same reason. So you got to be careful with your Midsummer's Night's Dreams, I guess.
I guess you could watch like the 1935 version. And
I've not actually seen the 1935 version, but it's supposed to be quite good. I've seen clips from it. I love Jimmy Cagney, who plays Bottom. He's a great gangster actor. He played a lot of great gangsters in the 1930s.
He plays Bottom?
Yeah, he plays
That's
Bottom.
fun.
Yeah, so the guy in the version I watched was also, they played Bottom as a street tough kind of he had kind of a Brooklyn accent sort of thing. So it was one of those modern.
Hey, she here.
Pretty much, which worked. I mean, he was just like a classic blowhard street guy, which made sense. I guess that is a worthwhile question to ask for baggage. What versions of this have you guys seen? Jake, you just seen the
Kevin Kline
version.
Yeah,
would you recommend the Kevin Kline version?
It's a whole lot of nudity. And they did some things that I thought were weird.
I would probably not recommend. A, there is a lot of that kind of stuff, and B,
they did they made Kevin Kline is Bottom, and he's super charming and doesn't, is a very different treatment of
they had this whole
Bottom
subplot about how Bottom's wife is like
hates him,
and
he's a dreamer who
Yeah, forget that.
he does a really charming job as Bottom, but it's a very different Bottom.
I mean, he's good at the comedy. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, he knows how to get laughs out of things like, I'll have Peter Quince write a thing and it will be called Bottom's thing. He just knows how to time that sort of thing so that it's funny. But
I mean, he was the star of the show.
Right.
Who played the other characters?
Titania was Michelle Pfeiffer.
Oh, I remember this version. I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Stanley Tucci, I think, was Puck.
Yeah.
And he did all right.
Christian Bale was not Lysander, but
oh yeah, Christian Bale was
what's the other guy?
The one of the bros in the woods there.
Demetrius.
Yeah, he was Demetrius. Close to Flockhart's Helena.
Yeah, and I didn't like her take on it at all. She just plays Helena as completely crazy, like clingy. Come back, Lysander. Whatever one she's interested in. What you looking for, Brandon? It looks like you're looking for something.
No, I'm just trying to think how we're going to talk about this play.
Well. The first question I wanted to ask you guys is, why did we decide to do this play? I don't know how to talk about it at all.
We were all like, oh, this is a heavy year. We're going to have labyrinths. And
we felt that we'd made a mistake last year because we did Macbeth in the middle of summer when it felt too heavy.
We did Beowulf, and then we did Macbeth.
Right, which is bad.
And then we did Dracula.
Which is, kind of a heavy...
So this was supposed to be a palate cleanser.
This is kind of a palate cleanser after, what did we just do? After Murder on the Orient Express. So
it's all changed.
In Labyrinths.
That's right. Yeah.
It's supposed to have been Labyrinths
our Twitter followers.
And Something Wicked This Way comes on the other side. And Something Wicked still does come after. It's like what I did there.
Yeah, that was very nice. I applaud that. Well, I don't know. What do you guys want to talk about this? Too bad I don't have a Questiontron 2000 or something.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the play and I laughed. And
Did you laugh while you were reading it?
I read it in one sitting late at night, and I did not laugh as much as I did when I watched the Kevin Kline version that I don't recommend. Or I wish that I would have watched some of the stage plays or whatever, because I liked some of the clips that I saw. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, I'm trying to think whether I can recommend the one that I watched.
It looks really edgy.
Yeah, the trailer picked out all the edgy parts and put them all together. I mean, I can't trust myself. I'm too desensitized to that kind of stuff. I just won't recommend it. But it was pretty good, I think. I don't know. I wish you guys would have had time to watch it because.
Well, what I liked, the highlight of the Kevin Kline version was the play within the play.
Yeah,
that was really great, really well done, and highlighted how smart Shakespeare is as a writer. But again, I love, and I think we talked about this with Macbeth because we watched a couple different versions of Macbeth. We watched Patrick Stewart and we watched
that dumb Michael Fassbender version,
the Fassbender version. Right. I really love how much play there is within a Shakespeare play. Right. I think I've probably talked about this before too, but Tom Hiddleston giving an interview about the Hollow Crown and talking about all the different ways that you can convincingly give the line once more to the breach, dear friend speech. And it works 5,000 different ways. Once more to the breach, or once more to the breach, dear friend, and everything in between. And so I love that this is something that we weren't meant to read, but we were meant to see performed and interpreted for us. I love seeing the different interpretations. Some things are funny or not funny, serious or not serious based on an interpretation. So
yeah, actually, and it can really change the way you think about these things. The example I have from this go around was the character of, I get them confused. Hermia is kind of the main girl that the two guys are interested in.
And Helena is the desperate one. Yeah.
So in the Kevin Kline version, Callista Flockhart plays the desperate one,
right? And
she plays her really crazy, and then the other girl is played more or less straight until the end when they're like beating each other up in a mud pit or something like that. So it escalates into everybody being screechy and crazy, but basically your sympathies are supposed to be with the young lovers that are in this weird Romeo and Juliet kind of a situation.
Yep.
In the other version that I watched, the young lovers were really dopey and self-important and kind of playing it funny from the beginning, and it actually made the whole play make a lot more sense to me that way
because it read as a mockery of young stupid people.
Yeah, just of young stupid love. When the guy says like the course of true love never did run smooth, they were both being.
You imagine somebody who lives in their mom's basement or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Sort of line. Yeah.
I mean, it was just like these two completely self-involved, self-important, like every young lover is. I mean, it's not hateful towards the idea of young love, I think, but it's just like, they don't have any clue what they're doing. And really, you could probably swap these couples around and 5 more times, and as long as there's a guy for each girl, what is it? They're pretty interchangeable. That's what this other version, they were all sort of equally crazy. And if anything, your sympathies were a little bit more with
Puck.
Yeah, really.
Oberon.
I don't know. What did you guys think? Is this play meant to teach you anything about the nature of love or fate or dreams, or what is the point of is this just a fun evening's entertainment? What is the immortal bard of Stratford upon Avon trying to accomplish here?
So I guess it all comes down to Puck's apology, right? At the end.
Mm-hmm.
You're the one that got me thinking about that in the first place, but I definitely paid attention to it more.
Or he just tongue-in-cheek basically says this might all just be a dream too.
Right.
Yeah. And
nothing to see here.
So, I feel like the right answer to that question is it's just supposed to be a super fun, whatever, whimsical, enjoyable night out. That also maybe makes you question what's up and what's down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
That was an enthusiastic.
and maybe that's supposed to be part of the pleasure, is that you come away and you've lived in a dream for 2 hours, or however long it takes to perform.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cleverness going on. So him playing around with the form is definitely here at the end, where you've had the play within the play. You've had Oberon and Titania, where, are you really supposed to think this is happening, or are you actually seeing their dream as they're terrified about whatever's going to happen the next morning because they've all ran away and they know that she could be killed by her father. And so it's bookended by these two things that we know are actually happening. Mm-hmm. You have the dream that possibly happened, and then Puck comes on stage at the very end and tells us this might all have been a dream. Yeah, it is fun. And the point he's making is fun. I mean, you just take a step back and you're like, yeah, all art is kind of a dream. And that's, but is he teaching us something? That's your question.
Well, I realize it's a dumb question because is he teaching
Like, I don't
something
think he's
in Hamlet?
teaching us.
No,
I don't think he's teaching us something like he teaches us in Hamlet.
Right.
But he is teaching us about the value of the comedic form, which is not going to be as deep as, and none of his comedies are as deep as as deep, and I'm doing air quotes here.
Right. Well, like if you read The Taming of the Shrew, it's not that any of his plays are intended to be purely didactic. Of course, that's not what we're saying. But if you read The Taming of the Shrew or The Tempest, or The Merchant of Venice, there's a lot of insight and things that you can glean about human nature and about how the world works and how romance works. This, to me, I'm not sure has any of that. It's just
unless it's interpreted the way that in the version that you saw, where you have all these self-important lovers who think they're going to make their own destiny and do their own thing, and they're actually guided by unseen forces, and it ends up, the way it ends up, despite them.
Right.
And if that's the lesson that all you self-important lovers out there who think that you're going to control your fate and your destiny, you're pretty dumb.
Well, one point of interest about that I don't think Brandon mentioned, Shakespeare would have written this, I believe, right around the time that he wrote Romeo and Juliet.
This is right.
And he includes a total mockery of that kind of that exact kind of a story.
Yeah.
Down to the suicide. I mean, it's a total
Yes.
Romeo and Juliet kind of.
You gotta love him for that.
Yeah. He seems to have some self-awareness there or something. I don't know. Well, no less than our good buddy on the Bookening, old Gilbert Keith Chesterton, said this was the greatest. Are you crying?
No, I just got something in it.
Oh, okay. I looked over at Brandon. It's just like,
You're going to talk about Chesterton.
it's like a tear.
No, yeah, something's in it. I
I'm
can't get
sorry.
it out. It's fine.
It would have been quite the moment if you'd really been what you looked like when I looked over. Like, what did I say?
Chesterton.
No less than G.K. Chesterton said this was the best Shakespeare play. He said that Hamlet was or Macbeth was perhaps the best character study of Shakespeare, but he said just as a work of art, this was the best Shakespeare play. And he said, if the ending were acted properly, any modern man would feel shaken to his marrow if he had to walk home from the theater through a country lane. So,
Why?
What's that?
Why? What does he mean by that? Because might this all be a dream as you're walking down?
Yeah, exactly. If you can find this essay online by just put in, I don't remember what the essay is called, but just put in Chesterton Summer's Night Dream. And he talks about how he says this play captures the feeling of a dream. He says just as an artistic capturing of a mood, this is one of the great works of art, much better than Hamlet or anything like that in terms of just simply capturing a feeling or a mood. This play captures what a dream is like. It's almost singular in the way that it does that per Chesterton, because what it's doing is you stay the same. You are the constant, and everything else around you is getting swapped. People are getting changed out.
That's interesting.
Allegiances are getting changed out. Things are confusing and disorienting and crazy, and you're running through the dark, and maybe you're a horse, but the thing is you're still the same.
You're the audience watching.
Right. So he said just in terms of capturing that feeling, and then Chesterton, he says, and then the fairies come back at the end and they wink at the idea that you actually should be kind of shaken, but you should feel that. Like I remember when The Matrix came out, there were people saying, I saw The Matrix and, am I real? Is this real? Like, read a book. See some more sci-fi movies, something. Don't be so impressed by The Matrix, 11-year-old Michael Crumb.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, The Matrix actually isn't a bad example from my generation of something that made people suddenly think, oh, am I, one of those mind-blowing kind of things. That's the feeling.
It makes you double think about your reality.
Yeah, what if this is all a dream? What if what if the guy that's dreaming about the Bookening is about to wake up and Jake and Brandon and Nathan will never exist?
But I think the statement here is more about art than it is about our reality, right? I don't think Shakespeare's saying that our world is a dream. Or is he?
I don't know.
Man.
You want to go up against...
What's he saying, man?
Jake knocks to Aristotle from his perch. You want to take on Chesterton now?
Yeah. Well, I mean... If I can get this thing out of my eye, maybe I'll be able to say something.
You want to take a break and go wash it or something?
No, it's good. So the people who are watching the play at the end, you have Theseus and you have Hippolyta. They're kind of the steady characters. They're stand-ins for the audience, right? They're kind of stand-ins for us.
Especially when they have their little debate about where he's just like there are 3 kinds of irrational person. And then she's like, well, it's kind of weird that they would all have the same crazy dream, though.
Well, I mean, obviously one of the big themes of this is just the complete inability of men and women to understand one another. But yet they're, for various reasons, thrown into having to understand one another. Ask your parents, kids.
Are you talking about the special hugs that people give each other?
Yes, the special hugs.
That result in the stork bringing a baby?
Yes, Nathan. I can tell you about it later.
Okay, maybe off mic you can explain more about this. I've always been curious about it.
But I mean, if you think about it, every character, I guess, except maybe Aegeus, but then he has the relationship with his daughter. But it's always this conflict between male and female. So even Oberon and Titania, that's at root there, the debate they're having, because they haven't spoken to one another in a long time. And so Oberon is trying to figure out how to get one over on her by making her fall in love with the animal. And that is where a lot of the farce comes from. And comedy is this relationship, which is, I guess, is why a lot of the great comedies nowadays are all about relationships too. So just something about the great farce of a man even trying to woo a woman in the first place, or a man and a woman trying to live together.
But I think
that is kind of what Chesterton talks a lot about that.
Right. He says marriage is a lover's quarrel.
Yeah, just completely incompatible.
Right.
Yet.
But
we live together.
I think it's much easier to say that, for example, The Taming of the Shrew or a number of other Shakespeare plays are about that, about how our innate nature as men and women makes things difficult for us and makes it humorously difficult for an audience. But this play just seems like life is difficult when there are fairies giving you love potions. I mean, does anything really arise out of the innate nature of man?
Well, Demetrius and his gal that he ends up with. Yeah. Right, she wants him, but he doesn't want her. He wants the other girl.
And the problem is solved not because of any insight into character, but because the fairies decide to leave him potioned up and depotion the other person.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, there is a different resolution. Like you don't really see that in The Tempest either. They already like each other. The issue there is with Caliban and the whole struggle that happens with that, and Ariel gets involved, and so.
But wouldn't Chesterton's point be? Yeah, that's the genius of it. It's not all in you. There are some things that aren't explainable by great insight into human nature, but these queer outside supernatural forces that are working on us, and you can call them fairies or whatever you want to. It's not all perfectly explicable. I don't know. I
don't know whether that's Chesterton's point. I think that's a good point.
Is that not? That's the way that I understood Chesterton's point. I don't know if that's.
Yeah, the resolution.
I don't know what else to take out, but things like that, I don't know.
I mean, the resolution is very different than the other comedies. That's fair enough. But I don't think it changes the fact that it's still at root is about that tension. That's what makes comedy fun.
Right.
Is that just obvious tension between maleness and femaleness. Which is why our new transgendered, neutered culture can never have real comedy and never have real fun.
Well, that's an interesting point about this particular play, because all the versions that I've watched and all the YouTube clips of other versions that I've watched, excluding some of the really old ones like the Jimmy Cagney one, but everybody tends to view this play as a very androgynous kind of...
it's a very gender-bendy
gender fluid, play.
The fairies and the sprites are a perfect excuse to be all gender bendy.
Yeah, right. People like to make a fact about the fact. Make a fact about the fact.
They like to make
a lot about the fact that Puck never has a gender assigned.
Does somebody not at least use a male pronoun in reference?
I don't know.
To him?
Maybe not. But his name is Robin, not Robert.
Well, and you've also got Titania and Oberon apparently living in some kind of weird, hippie, open kind of relationship, because they've both had lovers, and Oberon doesn't mind playing a joke and tricking his wife into basically whatever.
Spending a night with an ass.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Brendan's cry face that one time really just like... I don't know. Was Shakespeare saying that gender is fluid, guys?
No. He had nothing invested in that fight except just no.
Why did he choose to have, as a guy that was a Christian, as far as we know, or at least writing in a very Christian culture. What's with the depiction of the fairies as being sort of either beyond or beneath or different than regular morality? Why don't Titania and Oberon exist in any kind of marriage as we understand it? Why are they supposed? Is there something pagan about that, or what are we dealing with here?
Oh no, my guess is it's pagan.
Fairies going to be fairies.
Fairies going to be fairies. Greek gods going to be Greek gods set in Greece. So
that was
Athens.
did this feel like it was set in Greece to you guys at all? It felt completely like a London play.
It felt like
especially Bottom
English
and his friends
countryside.
in English countryside, and the fairies feel very. Everything about this play feels English. I think Chesterton makes that point in his point in that essay too.
That's part of the brilliance of it. Is that it feels English.
The Chesterton essay is interesting because he's obviously mad at George Bernard Shaw for trying to cast Shakespeare as the supreme rationalist or something like that. So whatever it is that Chesterton's doing, and I'm not quite sure what he's doing, it's a weird essay, but he's obviously...
It's certainly aimed at George Bernard Shaw.
It is squarely aimed at George Bernard Shaw.
As a lot of his essays were.
You think Shakespeare is a rationalist? I present to you A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Right.
Make sense of this, baby.
And guess what? It's his best play, George.
Well, Shakespeare does, when it comes to rationalists, a lot of his rationalists have pretty bad ends. So Hamlet tries to be a rationalist.
Right.
And doesn't go so well for him. We didn't talk any about catharsis, but...
Let's talk about catharsis.
Catharsis is just the theory that through the emotions that the play elicits, it's supposed to purge your emotions.
Sorry.
I know with my eyes closed.
Can you see how Brandon looks to me?
I only see his left eye.
It just looks like he's like winking at me the whole time.
Like we're in on a joke together.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know what's in my eye. It must be some allergy.
Jake thinks the play's about catharsis. I wish you could just see this.
I should just get a patch for my eye.
You should just get a patch.
Well, I don't even know where I was going with that now.
Well, I guess.
Well, I hear.
Yeah.
It's a large part of it's about the effect as opposed to the actual, like it's supposed to tell you something.
Right.
And so it's like music. It's not necessarily aiming at teaching you some moral lesson as it is about producing the pleasure of a good story.
So how
the pleasure of a story well told, and all the pieces fit together, and it's not trying to teach you some ultimate thing about reality. It throws that all at the end because it's a fun little tidbit, and it's like blowing out the candle there at the end. Like, so you've watched this play within a play. The themes have been dreams and troubling boundaries and all these weird things, and it's been a strange journey, and now just as one little last twist, Puck's going to walk out like he does in a lot of plays. I mean, you have Rumor start out as one of the histories, right? I think it might be the Henrys. He's covered in tongues. Have you never seen this?
I don't think
Rumor, he walks out onto the stage and he addresses the audience. So this is just something that happens in the play sometimes. One of the characters will actually come out and will address you we'll just break the fourth wall and address the audience. And so it's something that the audience would have found fun, and it would have been a signal to them that the play is about to end. And here's one little last, nudge at your side that Shakespeare's giving you. So in other words, I think it's about the effect of the play. It's about the pageantry. It's about the fun of the story. I don't know if there's a lesson we're trying to drive home here.
No, I don't think that there is. Is there?
No, which means that it is a difficult play to talk about.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the nature of... Okay, so the point of the play is that it's a fun play, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe that's a dumb way to put it, but the point of the play is it's a good evening at the theater, and there's funny stuff and cool mystical fairies doing crazy things and young love, and it all escalates into madness, and Puck is funny and Nick Bottom is funny.
It's super self-referential.
It's super self-referential.
Even, I was just thinking, all the women would have been played by men originally, right?
Yeah.
And so even the fact of the joke about the dude who has to play the chick in the play within the play would have been a commentary on the two men running around as Hermea and Helena, pretending to be.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yeah,
I like to think about the humor that we don't get. I always feel like there are things that are sailing over our heads that they would have gotten that we wouldn't have gotten, and that's one of the one of them that just occurred to me. But yeah, it's so super self-referential. Where were we going with that idea?
Well, I was just asking, okay, so it's the play. This is the point of this play is to enjoy a play. How does it achieve that effect? What effect does it achieve? And what are the mechanics that, if someone is approaching this play for the first time, as some of our listeners may be doing, what should they be looking to get out of it? They're not going to get a great lesson about the human spirit or anything like that.
I think they should probably come to it having watched a bunch of other plays.
This shouldn't be their first Shakespeare.
It shouldn't be their first Shakespeare, because so much of if it's really a self-referential, like I'm Shakespeare and I'm going to go super meta and I'm going to make fun of Romeo and Juliet and I'm going to make fun of the play-going experience and I'm going to make fun of all the stupid little things that we have to do, like have men play women and whatever, then you should have some sense of what the expectations for what normal expectations for a play are, so that you can be in on as much of the joke as you can. Right?
Yeah,
I think totally.
Yeah, I think that's a good first step. Go and read a whole lot of other Shakespeare plays.
Right. It really helps to have seen Romeo and Juliet or one of those.
The more we read these,
tragedies.
the more I just think people shouldn't read them.
Just watch them.
They should be watched.
Well, the problem with this one is that we don't have a good version to recommend, because they all have the female form in various stages of undress. But or the male form, whatever.
The male as well.
Yeah, I wish you guys had watched this version, because I'm tempted to recommend it, but I'm not comfortable doing it without a second, because it's edgy, but it's not that edgy. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, too bad.
So sad.
So sad.
Yeah, so they should read or watch a whole bunch of Shakespeare plays, and then just watch the way that he unfolds the story.
Yeah.
The mechanics are fun to watch. So that's like when people talk about this play, usually, you'll talk about, well, today they're going to talk about the androgyny of some of the characters.
Fluidity.
They're also, apparently the person who owned this book before me, they were really into all the times they talked about skin color. So you had the words fair and white and tawny, and out beside tawny they have dark skinned. I was like, okay, so I know what this person was all about. So
I will say one thing very quickly about, I don't want to turn this podcast into a whole thing about the gender fluidity. Who cares? That's dumb. I will say the only reason that the androgyny in a play like this is funny is because you're bringing
actual sexual expectation. Just like the only reason that Homer Simpson is funny is because everyone understands innately that fathers are supposed to be good and respected and dignified, and therefore Homer Simpson's funny because he's not. This kind of androgyny appearing in comedy, I think comedy and horror, those two genres are both innately transgressive, and they're also both generally innately conservative, because in order to be transgressive, you got to have something to transgress. And so I want to quickly and summarily dismiss any claims of this play being a great advocacy piece for androgyny because the whole point is that it's funny and interesting to watch because it's transgressing what normally should be happening, and then what normally should be happening gets restored by the end of the play, and that's a happy ending. And then he's got neutral devices that he can use in these mystical beings to do it, so he doesn't even have to have normal people be the transgressive ones.
Right.
They're just caught up in this machinery that tosses them around a bit. And it's funny to watch.
They become the playthings of the gods.
But because we know it's not a Woody Allen movie, they're actually going to be... They're going to come out okay in the end, and there is going to be the wedding, and everything's going to be fine. And it's going to reassert, like you said, this the beauty of marriage and the wonder and weirdness of a man and a woman being together. And everybody would have seen it, and Shakespeare liked Anne Hathaway and gave her his marriage bed when he died.
Right.
Because he was the kind of guy that could write these sorts of things.
Right.
So
that's the end of any... We don't want to hear about it. People that think this play is some kind of weird gay rights play. I don't know what people say, but whatever they say, it's dumb. So what were we talking about? I just wanted to stab that one in the heart, and then we could be done with it. But
we were talking about the mechanics.
The mechanics.
And so, I mean, there are a lot of things that, so when people talk about this play, you're going to talk about those sorts of things. You're going to talk about how he plays with imagination and the dream within the dream and the layers that he adds to that. Then you're also going to look at how it relates to other plays and kind of borrows from them. So you have...
This is not based on anything, by the way, right?
No, it's not. Just the names. I mean, Theseus
Theseus
really
conquered the Amazons and married Hippolyta and Plutarch, I think, right?
Yeah, so that's really the only thing that has any basis in something else. And this is just then saying, okay, well, he's about to marry Hippolyta. What might have happened right before his wedding?
Right.
Well, somebody might have come to him with an issue about his daughter.
Right.
And then you go from there. And they run away, the 4 kids, and then they get into all sorts of crazy trouble.
They sure do.
All's well that ends well.
Right.
Yeah, all's well that ends well. And then he just makes it, he keeps adding, what a fugue is. It takes a musical theme and then keeps adding different variations on that theme on top of the theme. And sometimes you'll have the theme playing it 3 times at once. Mm-hmm. And it gets really complicated, and then it has a resolution. And it's kind of going on here. You have all these different themes. You have Titania, you have Oberon and Titania. You have the 4 Utes. Kind of Theseus and Hippolyta, but really they're never up for grabs.
They always are in movies. They always, and they're not up for grabs, but I have yet to watch a version where Hippolyta doesn't sort of somehow with her face or something show that she's in a huff when Theseus doesn't just grant Hermia's request at the beginning. And I think in that Kevin Kline version, they do even more. They push it.
Yeah, they're really playing like this whole...
I guess they just kind
of... On the one hand, it seems like she really likes him and is in love with him. On the other hand, maybe she hates him.
Right.
He has to go off and talk to her. And when they have this like side conversation that's not actually in the play, I don't think.
No, it's not.
That's strange because, I mean...
Then he comes back and announces that he's overwriting everything and they're getting married with him that in the afternoon or whatever. Because
in the actual Shakespeare play, I mean, it starts out fairly happily. They're talking about their wedding night, and even she says, we just have 4 days to go.
It doesn't feel to me like he's supposed to be any character like that. It feels to me like he's just supposed to be the guy that's in every Shakespeare play who's just like Mr. Authority figure, shows up at the end and makes some judgment, and the bad guy is going to get taken away and he's going to make some it's like almost every Shakespeare play has this guy. It's like a duke or a king or a somebody who... Yeah,
he's the bookends because we can trust him and he's solid and he's there and we don't have to worry about the world falling apart for him. If it was going to build a story off of him, it would become a tragedy.
Right, absolutely.
Because he's the classic tragic. He has the status of a tragic hero. And so it quickly pans away from him to the world of comedy. These young people... The bumbling dad who doesn't want to give his daughter away, wants to kill her.
Yeah, that's a good solution, Dad.
So, and then the world of fairies, and it gets into the world of make believe.
The trolley takes them to the...
Yeah, Mr. Rogers shows up. He's got puppets. Some Indian spices.
Did you guys think that we were supposed to feel any, because like I said, I saw the 2 different versions that kind of handled this differently, and I know which one kind of played better for me. I think I already said, but did you guys think we were supposed to actually take the plight of the 4 young lovers seriously at all, or was it all tongue-in-cheek?
I think you probably were meant to feel the tension, right, of, oh no, this is all messed up and needs to be resolved, and that pressure on Puck from Oberon to fix the thing that he screwed up.
I think you were supposed to feel
comedic tension.
You were supposed to feel sympathy for Hermia and Lysander. You were supposed to feel like Demetrius needed kind of his comeuppance because he's kind of and you were supposed to be sympathetic with Helena.
That's what I thought too.
But then by the time you get to, I guess it's Act 4 where everything's been screwed around on them and they're all mad at each other. The women are both being total shrews and the men are both being hotheads, and they're all kind of just interchangeably ridiculous at that. And it's not really their fault. I guess the gods have been bewitching them, but at a certain point it does just turn into farce. Like,
it gets all chaotic and messy, but it doesn't change the fact that they are these set characters at the beginning. So
I like the idea. I want to see the version where it's a more tongue in cheek all the way
equally
through.
distributed young foolishness.
Yeah, I want to see that.
I don't know whether that was inherent to Shakespeare, but it made for a funnier version, and it made you feel a lot better about all those characters getting their comeuppance. They all sort of were selfish brats that they didn't deserve to be unhappy or severely punished, but one night of the gods joking around with them felt fair.
That's not the way that I read it. But it certainly sounds like a very clever way of reading it. Yeah, I want to see it interpreted that way. I think that would be really interesting, and I like the idea of that being maybe the way that Shakespeare intended it, and I just missed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All I can say is that's not the way that I read it, and it's not the way that the Kevin Kline version interprets
They were more sympathetic with Lysander, and
they
Lysander
were
and
totally unsympathetic with Helena. She was just like...
I thought they botched Helena.
I thought so too.
Christoph Lockhart just obviously didn't know how to do Shakespeare, and the director didn't have the nerve to tell his star how to do Shakespeare. There's
nothing sympathetic about
which that's strange, because if you have one character should be sympathetic towards, because she goes through all sorts of
sympathetic character. I thought
the two guys end up making her feel like they're just making fun of her.
Yeah, that's horrible. That's like you really feel her pain when she's the one that you can most believe would feel hurt by the fact that why is everybody?
And you're right. I mean,
doing this to me?
But in that interpretation, it's just like
she's
loud and she's
clingy,
obnoxious,
come back,
and then it's just another occasion for her to be loud and obnoxious, like.
And so Hermia at the beginning, Theseus is trying to tell her, well, you need to listen to your father. That's basically his his point that he keeps making. Well, you need to listen to your dad. And she says, well, I just wish you could see with my eyes. And I was like, well, you kind of just need to see with his eyes. And if Theseus really is this voice of reason, then she is foolish at the beginning, because then she just runs away with Lysander.
Well, yeah.
And then he gives
she's going to give up. She's going to die, or she's going to go be a nun. Yeah,
and the obvious, I mean, she's not an Antigone. She's not making this for some noble choice.
No, it's youthful passion.
Yeah. And so he says here, I mean, they say these, oh, cross, too high to be enthralled to low. And then she keeps saying, oh, spite, oh, hell. Right. So they get some pretty funny lines where obviously he's poking fun at their just ridiculousness.
That stuff, like the Kevin Kline version played a lot of that, less so as it went on, but it played a lot of that stuff straight, and it just made a lot more sense when, like in the other version that I watched, that whole opening thing after Theseus leaves
Amanda
them.
laughed every time it was "Oh spite, oh hell."
Right.
She thought that was pretty funny, and
that part was funny. But
but what I'm agreeing with, whatever version you're talking about,
right?
I think that Shakespeare was kind of tongue in cheek here, especially with Hermia and Lysander.
Well, and the two dudes.
And I think you're not supposed to like Demetrius at first at all. He's just kind of
he's just an interloper. Well,
are you supposed to like him ever? I'm not sure I ever did.
Well, I mean, at the end,
not
you're
any
supposed
sort
to be
of
okay with him, the resolution that happens.
But it's not
character growth. Be happy
growth.
that Helena gets what she wants her to be.
Right. It's not because I've in both all the versions I've read and in watching it didn't really feel any sympathy for the dudes. Maybe it's just because I don't usually feel sympathy for hot guys that are quarreling over hot girls, but the dudes to me felt fairly interchangeably like bland young lovers. Hermia and Helena, I could tell they had distinctly interesting characters and points of view, at least insofar as the farce of the story would allow them. But
so that puts you in the perspective of Theseus, who's looking at Hermia and is saying, I'm not sure between the two of these guys that one of them is really worth, dying or being a nun over and giving up a happy life with a family.
A lot of people have said, obviously it's easy to be unhappy with Theseus for upholding brutal Athenian law there, but at least one thing I read said that what we're actually seeing is an act of mercy because he's giving her the nun option too, which wouldn't be expected. So it's kind of like he's pulling, just go with the guy. It's not that bad, but also don't get yourself killed over this. You can, if you gotta be an idiot, you can do the nun thing. So he really is this character, like Brandon was saying, just the voice of reason and of whatever.
They're who Titania and Oberon should be if they weren't pagan
weirdos. Yeah. Freaker people.
Swingers.
Yeah. Pagan swingers.
Oh, yeah. One thing we haven't talked about is that what he's also having fun with is, he wrote his sonnets, and they have this theme of love and the courtly love and the language of love at the time. And that oh hell, oh spite, that's kind of getting along those lines and just kind of making fun of that whole idea of the passionate expression of love in the first place, because everybody is making passionate expressions of love to everyone else just as soon as they're put under a spell.
Right.
And so and then in the end,
the more we talk about, I'm sorry.
Once the spell's taken away, then the resolution is just marriage.
Right.
And
the more we talk about this being really tongue-in-cheek, the more that I love it.
I think there's a good argument to be made that the whole thing's tongue-in-cheek, especially because the whole fifth act is a sarcastic version of the same lover's plight kind of a story.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm convinced.
And I just think it's just so much more fun. I don't know what Shakespeare was going for, but it's really fun.
Everything that I've seen looks like they play it straight, the love angle, but I really like the idea of it. I just think that that's the right way to do it, and I love the idea of it. I don't know.
Well, the evidence is there. Theseus, you know why Hippolyta's there, because he conquered her.
Right.
He brought her back. Right. But she's going to marry him, and they seem perfectly fine. Right. She doesn't seem upset at it.
And then you have these four bland, interchangeable, and if you want selfish lovers.
Yeah, and if you want to, so Shakespeare's making us men want to conquer the woman.
Right.
And once she's conquered, marry her. We'll just say marry her. And these guys are making a big deal about it, and they're getting all in their exuberant expressions about it. And so then everybody starts falling in love with everybody else, and the passion is all there, and it all gets messed up. And it's just, Shakespeare's he's having a lot of fun with it. And then in the end, when things are resolved, it's not because they all have killed themselves like Romeo and Juliet,
or pyramids,
or have written sonnets to one another.
Right.
It's because there was a wedding. And then there's the marriage life after the wedding. And that's where the happiness is. It's not the silly, exuberant expressions of love and stuff. You can end up falling in love with a man with an ass's head.
Right.
If you get carried away.
Right. So. Yeah. And it actually does, as much as we said this isn't the play with any intentional deep insights into human nature, when we get into all this gender fluidity, it turns out that women behave in a pretty predictably clingy, womany kind of a biznitchy way, whatever the Bookening appropriate word of that is, and men become aggressive blowhards.
No, we don't.
So yeah, once again, not a good play to go to for your queer theory paper, Actually, probably a great play because your professor's dumb and will give you an A, but you're wrong, grad student listening to the Bookening who doesn't agree with it.
Yeah, you're dumb. Which, to go back to that story you were telling at the beginning of this being at someone's wedding, why people like that story is because it does reinforce what this is about. The happiness is when finally at the end, the fire is dying down, they've just had the play, everybody's happy, and then Theseus and Hippolyta are talking, and I was like, well, they're all going off to, consummate now, and things are good.
Right.
And so it's just the nice thought that then, probably the friends around having just watched would be joking with the young husband and wife after seeing the play, and they would all be like ribbing them, and then off they go.
Right.
And that's where the happiness is in the marriage and in the life after it. And in the fruit of that night with the children.
And they're all going to have beautiful children thanks to our fairy friends.
And then like Shakespeare, you can one day leave your bed to your wife and die at your daughter's wedding because you had a great time with your best friend.
That's a great story. I hope that's true. I hope we get to heaven and we're like, Shakespeare, was it true? And he's like, yeah, it's true.
We had a great time.
It was great. I wouldn't change a thing. Should Christians read stories about fairies?
No.
The Bookening today was written and produced by Nathan Alberson. It was performed by Brandon Chasteen and Jake Menzel. Go on to your favorite podcast downloadable thing, perhaps the thing that you're using to listen to this podcast, and you can download our other fantastic podcast, arguably second only to The Bookening, World We Made. The World We Made, I believe is the official title. It's a 8-season arc all about homosexuality. Got me and Jake. Doesn't have Brandon. Sorry, Brandon.
It's okay. You said 8-season arc, but I think you meant 8 episodes.
Oh, yes, an 8-season arc would be a long arc. It's basically like Lost. The first season's going to be really good, but there is a
smoke monster.
There's a smoke monster, yeah. The smoke monster that I call the gay Christian movement. Anyway, World We Made. Great podcast. Listen to it. Thank you for listening. Good night.